questions? Any answers? Any stock tips? Any jokes?
I would love to know how you got started in this field.
In this strange little niche of a niche of a niche of a field. Nice question. That was Diane who asked that. Hi. It happened kind of by accident in college. I was a sophomore in college in Ann Arbor, any Michiganders here, in 1971, and I had been playing for dance classes and playing in restaurants and bars to earn some money and writing music reviews for the Michigan Daily. And one night I was playing some ragtime in my dorm, you know, the typical, and somebody set up a projector and a Laurel and Hardy film. And so I just kept playing. And that was my baptism into my bar mitzvah, I don't know, into playing for silent films just for fun. And then my composition teacher, a wonderful man named William Albright, said that he had been asked to play by one of the film societies for a screening of Phantom of the Opera at one of the big halls in town on campus. But he said, well, you already had some experience, why don't you do this? So I thought, well, why not? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I did some research. I watched the film ahead of time on a borrowed projector and a copy of the film that had come in a couple of days prior to the screening. And I knew from that there are these scenes during this Lon Chaney film that take place on the stage of the Paris Opera, and they're doing a performance of Gounod's Faust. So, and there's a full corps de ballet there. And so I did the research and found what they probably would have been dancing to and tried to match it. And then I wrote my own somewhat Faustian, Lisztian themes. One for the Phantom was. And went on from there for 90 minutes. And I think I had to do a second show and practically fell over at the end of that because that's a lot of playing. My wife and I have since done Phantom many times, and she sings 3 or 4 of the arias from Faust in masquerading as 2 different sopranos, the one who's really awful, and then Christine, who is being tutored by the Phantom. So that was my beginning. Then I got a chance to play for other film societies on campus in Michigan and did many, many silent films and wrote a fan letter to the guy that was playing for the PBS films in 2 series that were being shown at that time in the mid-70s. And he said I should come and see him when I went to New York, and we became very good friends, and it turned out that he was playing at the Museum of Modern Art and hired me in the spring of '73 to be his substitute. And so from that time on to this day, I've been one of the pianists at MoMA, which led to many, many other places around the country and eventually Europe and Asia and on and on. Long story short.
Donald, I can't help but notice that when you start playing, everybody perks up and everybody smiles.
Oh, that's a good sign for me to shut up and play. You know.
I wasn't going to put it that way.
What would you like to hear, anybody? I started out as a classical pianist and then started playing ragtime, as you heard, of 2 bars, and became a theater musician in New York and did what theater musicians there do, which is when you're not actually playing a show, you're working behind the scenes, coaching singers or playing their auditions, sometimes 300 a day, walking in. I had to play auditions for a cruise ship once, and all these singers would come in with their ratty pieces of sheet music that they'd been trucking around to auditions for years, and you get one shot to do your 16 bars before they throw you out. So I had to learn very quickly how to do that, and then got some experience conducting and arranging. I arranged music for Warner Brothers and Cherry Lane for 2 years and did a couple of thousand pieces of sheet music by everybody from George Harrison and Bob Dylan to Richard Hell and the Voidoids. So that was my New York career in a nutshell. And so that gives you some sort of a range of musical things to listen to choose from if you want to hear something.
So of your own pieces, what is your favorite to play?
Oh, that's a terrible question. I don't know.
I hate that question when I'm asked, but nevertheless.
You know, I've written very little piano music to write down, even though I have hundreds and hundreds of hours of silent film music. And I don't usually go back and play that unless in the case of some of these scores that Alicia and I have been doing, where we're replicating the music that we've taken the trouble to actually notate 90 minutes, 2 hours worth of music. The very first piece of music that I ever wrote was a setting of the first 5 commandments in 1965 as a birthday present for my mother, who's now 98. And I can play you a little bit of that. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it was a starting place. Actually, even before that, I wrote a little waltz on the invitation of my first piano teacher, and that went like this. And then the 10 Commandments piece was for soprano, baritone, and piano, and I don't know if I sing and play at the same time what it'll sound like, but something like this. I am the Lord thy God, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. I am the Lord thy God, the Lord thy God, and so forth. After that, a friend of mine at the time said, "Oh, it sounds just like Vaughan Williams." So I don't know whether it did or not. Other pieces that I've written, I will play a couple for you, but they're not piano pieces, they're for orchestra. I think I'll wait until the rest of the larger contingent comes in before I do that. Why don't we make up a piece really quick? We have a few minutes. Anybody got a tune in the back of your heads that you're just dying to hum or sing and have turned into a Strauss waltz or a Chopin mazurka or a Shostakovich polka?
I don't have the tune, but we could create it. But I was wondering about your Chopin approach.
My Chopin
before I
approach.
give a tune.
Well, let's
Okay.
take a tune. Let's take a familiar tune like some Beatles song and turn it into a Chopin mazurka or waltz. Anybody know any Beatles songs?
I don't know.
Blackbird.
Blackbird. That originally that goes. Is the piano volume okay? Can you hear that okay? So that's in 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So we have to turn it into a waltz or a mazurka. So we're going to have to leave 25% out of kind of more Straussy than Chopin. Let's put it into minor. Kind of becoming a French waltz, I think. That calls for an accordion. Let's see if I can summon up an accordion really quick here.
Can I ask another question, Ryan?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Could you take Bach at the origin and turn it into something modern for a film? Have you done the
Bach, yeah, people do that all the time. I think Bach is being in the public domain is a favorite composer. So what piece of Bach and what film? Well, let's
film, I don't know, but I would say the Italian concerto.
So it should go into an Italian film, right? So by Morricone, perhaps. Should be a full orchestra with horns and everything. I think I have some strings I can pull up here. Let's see where the strings went. Strings are in another app, and it's hidden for the moment by something else. There we are. Let's see whether we can have the strings. Something like that. You know your Bach if you know the Italian concerto. That's not every day that you get to hear that.
So you threw out a question at the beginning that I'm going to throw back to you, and
Okay.
that is, when you're given a silent film to compose for, what aspect of the film moves you to write what you write? Is it the visuals? Is it the storyline? Is it what happens in your process?
That is a great question, and I really love thinking and talking about this. The first thing, I mean, there are several things that happen. First of all, when I'm just sitting down to play for a film that I've never seen before, and we could actually do that tonight, I have to look at the pace of the action and the setting of the action and what's happening. It's the story. Who are these people? What are they doing? Why are they doing what they're doing? What is their relationship to each other? What do you think is going to happen by the end of the film? What is the style of the film? Is it a mystery? Is it an avant-garde film? Is it a drama? Is it a comedy? All of those things have to be in the forefront of my mind immediately. Otherwise, it's just like treading water. And one of my colleagues says, when in the master class that we all teach in Italy, although not this year, unfortunately, he says, if you don't know what to do, he comes from Montreal. If you know what to do, then just do this for a long time until you get some idea. But at the beginning of a film, you want to be able to say, well, this film is about something. This film is expressing something. And so then there's the emotional content, which is something that music is so powerful at being able to give us access to. So why don't we make up a film? Are the other people joining, or are we stopping to do that?
Maybe that's a great way, Donald, for us to kick off the next part.
Perfect.
So we can let everybody in now.
Let them in. We need some entrance music. What would that sound like as a horror?
Thank you, Donald. That's by far our best intro in this season, and I do want to welcome everybody to the virtual stage of the Lawrence Family JCC, Jacob's Family Campus. Tonight's event is a presentation of the Arts and Ideas Department of the San Diego Center for Jewish Culture. My name is Ryan Isaac. I am the Director of Cultural Arts at the San Diego Center for Jewish Culture. And here we are, end of July, 4 months into this virtual programming. I want to thank everybody who's been a part of it. Donald, thank you for joining us now. And to everyone who has participated and supported us. I don't know if 4 months ago I would have expected us to have produced more than 30 events and welcomed more than 1,500 new friends via this platform. So thank you everybody for being a part of it. This will mark the final virtual event of this pandemic bridge. We will be ramping up for our 2020-21 seasons, the Arts and Ideas season, the J-Learn season, the Film Festival season, and others, including J Company within the CJC. I do want to thank our underwriters. It is through their support that we have been able to continue to program, and it is through their support that we will be able to move on into the next season, into 2021. And thank you to everyone. Reminder that we are on Zoom. So for those of you with video on, just remember, we can see you. So be mindful of that. I also want to bring up a current campaign that we are running, the Lawrence Family JCC Financial Assistance Fund. Through the generosity of the Potiker Family Foundation, we have a $50,000 match, dollar for dollar. Our goal is to raise $100,000 to ensure that everyone who wants to participate in our programs and our social services, that everyone is able to do so. Socioeconomic barriers will not prevent anyone from being a part of it. I believe at last check, we were about 87% of the way there. So we're nearing the end. Thank you for all of those who have participated. And if you are able to contribute, your help now is needed more than ever. And it's a wonderful way for us as a community to reach beyond our walls and welcome everybody in. I know that Abbey has the link that she can share. The link to that campaign will also be provided in the post-event email. Tonight, as many of you have heard already, we have musician and composer Donald Sosin with us. Donald has created vocals and instrumentals for classic silent films. Donald, I don't know if this is the first time you've ever opened for yourself, but some of us had the pleasure of listening to your stories and hearing your music. And I know we were on the verge of launching it into a pretty great demonstration. It should also be mentioned that Donald and his wife, Joanna Seaton, are music educators. And I think all of us tonight will be educated as well. I want to welcome Donald. Donald, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ryan. Hi, everybody. Those who just joined us. I see a couple of familiar faces. So just before you all came in, you newcomers, we were talking about the idea of how to start writing music for a silent film. What is the first, what are the major things that are involved when you sit down to write music for a silent film? And this also applies to sound films, of which I've done a few. The thing is that you have to, we have two different things here. One is the idea of spending time with a film and looking at it and preparing and all of that. And the other one is doing it completely on the spur of the moment, which is one of the things that I specialize in. Looking at a film sometimes for the very first time when you're playing for an audience of experts in film at a major festival. The film arrived at the last minute. You didn't get a chance to see it, only you know something about it from the catalog description, when it was made, how long it is, who made it, who the actors are, and something about the plot. So we had just gotten to the point where I said, well, why don't we just make up a film and see if we can come up with the music that might accompany that film. So we need somebody to volunteer. You can either write in the chat window or you can unmute yourself for a minute and come up with a title for a film or a place where the film takes place. It doesn't have to be a silent film. It could be everybody has got a trunk full of stories that you wrote in your adult education class, like my parents, who have folders which we're now going through trying to figure out what to preserve for posterity. And they have all these prompts that they were given. So you're going to give me the prompt, and I will come up with some other info. Donald, hello, another Donald, nice to see you. You're muted, sir. You need to unmute
Well,
yourself.
we'll get everybody unmuted here.
Okay. Whoop, you were unmuted for a second.
Can I say The World of Tomorrow as a title?
The world of tomorrow or the word of tomorrow?
World.
The world of tomorrow.
W-O-R-L-D. Sorry for the
Okay.
accent.
That's
A Tunisian movie. A movie made in Tunisia.
No, I was going to say Mongolia.
And Donald, what were you going to say?
Ironic version of Birth of a Nation.
An ironic version of Birth of a Nation.
Music would be ironic to what's going on the screen.
Yeah. The birth of the Tunisian nation, maybe in the world of tomorrow. So we have to start with some Tunisian style music. I don't have my dumbex or whatever, but we just do this on the piano. So the world of tomorrow, and Tunisia, birth of a nation, something or other. That reference to the Wagner was used in the original score of Birth of a Nation. If you didn't know, that's when the KKK is riding through the plains. That's what they're playing in the orchestra. And I always thought it was very funny that my Yiddish mama starts with the same few notes. Maybe that was someone thumbing their nose at Wagner when they wrote that. Well, I don't know whether that's going to be a great film score or a great film, but at least got us started. It gave us a sense of place, right? We're out in the middle of the Arabian desert someplace, not Arabian, we're out in Tunisia, which is far from Arabia. And we have, I don't know if it was ironic enough. What would make it ironic? Maybe if it was played by a bassoon, it would be ironic. Let's give it bassoon. That would be ironic. How about another Oscar-winning movie of the future? A director, a time in history. Let's pick a time in history.
And if you don't want to unmute, you can use the chat function and
You can type me
pick
a
that
little
up.
chat message if you want while we're waiting. You know who wrote that music, by the way? Anybody? My sister's not allowed to answer. Anybody else? Who knows who wrote that? 5, 4, 3. It was Merv Griffin, actually, who wrote that tune. And I'm sure he made a lot of money from it. Okay, let's turn the Jeopardy theme into Roaring Twenties as our time in history. Let's turn the Jeopardy theme into a Roaring Twenties song. So So there's our roaring 20s, but as our time in history, well, yes, we are in the roaring 20s. And it's, I don't know whether it's roaring up or roaring down at the moment. Only time will tell. We're early in the decade. I'm voting for up. I meant for our next creation, which I did. Okay, thank you, Abbey. Let's look, let's go back to the beginning of this idea for this event, which is titled Filling the Silence, right? So before we have the music, before we have talking, before we have anything, all we have is just silence, right? And you close your eyes and there's nothing going on. You're just in this quiet state of silence. Maybe you're meditating and you're drifting off someplace. If you're an artist, the analog for that would be a blank canvas or a white, empty film screen or TV screen, video screen. And so we have to fill that somehow. And as soon as we make any mark on the screen or we make any sound in the silence, then suddenly all of that unboundedness of the silence, which stretches to infinity, if we removed the boundaries of the screen or the boundaries of the artist's canvas or the boundaries of the audible musical spectrum, we have infinity, and we are going to collapse that into some point. So suddenly that has produced some vibration, in this case, an F sharp above middle C, and that takes us into the realm of the now and the precise, and gives us now some sort of a basis that we can use to go on from there. When we're just wandering around in this silence, whether it's visual or audio, we don't know what might arise out of that. You know, in the same way that scientists say that out of a black hole, anything could emerge, a battleship could emerge or a flower or something. The same thing happens when we're doing any kind of creative work. You don't know what is going to emerge. And for me, the interesting thing about working with silent film as a medium to bounce off on is that there are so many different possibilities, so many different styles of filmmaking, so many different styles of genres within the silent film larger genre, that it gives me a lot of opportunity to do many different kinds of things. I'm not stuck writing beer jingles all day long, or stuck writing just ambient music for elevators. I get to work with real people, even though most of them are long gone, and no director standing over my shoulder telling me what to do, which is really kind of a plus. So when I'm sitting down to write a film score, you need to, Ryan, let me share my screen now, okay? Still can't share. Ryan, I'm not getting, here we go.
Try it.
Okay, I got it now.
Okay.
So when I'm looking at a new film, this, and I have to turn off. When I'm looking at a new film, can you all hear me okay?
We got a little of the feedback that we had earlier today, Donald.
Yeah, now you're getting some feedback. Let's see why that happened. One second. Oh, okay. Computer sound, that's why I hit the wrong button. Okay, back to our share. So these are the things that I'm thinking about when I'm starting to score a film. And I teach master classes here and abroad, and always talk about at least some of these things to my students, as does my wife, Joanna, who Ryan mentioned before. starting with tempo. How fast is this music going to be? Is it going to be in 4? Is it going to be in 3 or 2 or 5 or 7 or some other mixed thing? And then am I going to have a melody? If I have a melody, how am I going to accompany that, if at all? It might just be a solo voice or a solo instrument. What style is this music in? Am I going to use music that is pre-existing in some library, or am I going to write new music? Am I going to keep the music very traditionally 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or break it up 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All of these different parameters are things that I've thought about doing over the course of my work. And I can't say that I go down this list every time that I'm starting a new score, but some of them are always in the back of my mind thinking, what do I do now? What do I do now? So that's kind of what was going on in these little first attempts to write a score to your suggestions. Let's now look at a piece of film here. And this is what happened to it? It vanished. Oh, here it is. I don't want to share the computer sound. Okay, I will share the computer sound. You all can see that now? Turn my headphones down a little bit so I don't get the feedback. So you can see this film, everybody?
Yes, we can. Still that feedback came back.
So this is a film made in the first decade of the 20th century and called A Child's Impulse by the Biograph Company. And you can see how gorgeous it looks. It's been beautifully restored. And so when we look at something like this, the setting is in some upscale house, and the guy's in trouble somehow, we don't know why. Somebody else is talking to him.
Donald, there's a little of that feedback that we experienced before.
Still hearing feedback? Oh, I'll have to turn this down even more. How's that? If I turn it down all the way, I can't hear you.
Okay, it didn't change it when you changed that.
Right. So when I'm looking at this, I have to think we've had already in the short space of time, we've had two different settings. We've had this urban, presumably urban upscale setting, and then we've had this kind of certainly a rural setting, and maybe not as upscale, given the way the people are dressed. And that's Mary Pickford on the right, by the way, in one of her very first film roles. So okay, let's go back a little bit. And I'll just make up some music, just very kind of neutral, let's say neutral, but in the tempo of what's happening here. Can you hear that okay?
Yes.
So I chose a minor key right away because of the pathos of what this character is experiencing. If I didn't, I mean, we might have something. something different to get us into this country thing. He hasn't reached there yet, but he's going. So maybe some more up-tempo thing. A little transition music. She doesn't like him. So now we have a new character. Mary has arrived. So we need a tune, maybe, a tune for her, since she's a major star, and major stars have to have their own music, right? So what kind of a tune should we have for Mary? Should it be major, minor? Doesn't have to be either. It could be. We have everybody in the musical world who was active in 1907, 1908, Prokofiev, Stravinsky, Rachmaninoff, Debussy, Ravel, Scott Joplin, you name it. All those guys and gals were working at that time, as well as the people who were doing what I'm doing 120 years later, which is just playing in small theaters, making up music sometimes, or playing whatever music they had on hand. So what should we do for her? I've lost my chat window, so I'll stop the share for 1 second. What do you think? What kind of a theme should we give to Mary?
How about some Debussy,
What?
Donald?
Something very bright, bright and
Something
energetic.
bright.
Yeah.
How was that?
Excellent.
Well, it's bright, but the question is, will it match what she's doing? Let's roll back a little bit. I'll start right before her entrance and go back to the screen share. I need a techie to do this. And that's here. What'd you think? For me, I couldn't see your reactions. Thumbs up or thumbs down or thumbs sideways. Some thumbs up. Some,
Yeah.
well, for me, I'll have to tell you that I think for what's going on, the shyness that I feel from her at meeting this new stranger, that it's a little bit too bouncy for me. So let's see what I actually wrote for this. I don't remember, but I have recorded this music, and this is what it sounded like. Can you hear that?
No, you might have to go to share sound.
I don't hear anything. Okay, hang on a second. Oh, I know. It has to be coming from QuickTime. The QuickTime is on. Yeah. And okay, share it and share the sound this time. I hope this will work. And nothing. Well, possibly this is a mute. Possibly this is a mute version of this film. We'll try another one. I just while I'm in it, I'll go back and just tell you what I think would be a little bit more characteristic here. Now we can bring it up a little bit. Does that make sense? There's no right or wrong in this. It's just a question of personal taste. And every composer who faces these is going to come up with something different. And that's what makes a ball game. And in some cases, on the highest levels of Hollywood film scoring, people make mistakes and are thrown out of the job. One of the most famous examples, two famous examples, is the film Chinatown. Do you all know that film with Jack Nicholson and who? Faye Dunaway. And a well-known Hollywood composer was hired to score the film, and they showed the film to preview audiences, and they just weren't getting it. And so the director, Roman Polanski, fired the composer and hired another well-known composer, Jerry Goldsmith, to write a new score. And his score was much more jagged, much more unusual. Some of the scenes were scored for 4 pianos and percussion, scraping the insides of the pianos. And suddenly the response in the preview audience went way, way over the charts, and it became a smash hit movie. What had changed? Nothing but the music. And so you have to give credit to these people that are doing this, spending their time. I mean, I'm not talking about myself, I'm doing what I can, but people that are working under great pressure, sometimes 3 weeks to write an entire orchestral score. Of course, they have orchestrators working. Sometimes the film changes in that process. It becomes a really, sometimes a nightmarish thing to do. In my own work, I go from having no time to write to having a couple of months to write, and would like to play you some examples if the sound will cooperate. Here is a film with a very well-known actor, and go back to screen share. I want to do, which one is it? Let's see what we have here. This one. So you can all see that. So in this film, there are many different scenes and they all have their own tempos. I chose a very slow tempo. Could you see and hear that okay? Yes, a very slow tempo, and in minor, even though this is a comedy, but it seemed like this was something which had a little bit of an ominous kind of feeling about it as Charlie is prepared to completely destroy this alarm clock. Another composer might go in another direction, and if I can find this clip here, that was that clip. The other one is hiding someplace in this list. Here we go. Here's another approach. See what you think of this. So what was that like? It's possible that that's the
For me-
minuet from the Haydn Clock Symphony. I'm not sure, which would have been
For
the
me,
only-
for,
Sorry, what, Jacqueline?
I say for me, it follows what Charlie Chaplin was doing, testing, asking questions to this
Uh-huh.
clock. And that
So-
sounded very questionable, interrogative.
What did you think about the major? Can you hear that? Versus the minor. Mine was slower. You don't have to choose mine if you think the other one worked.
I love the major because it was giving hope that finally
Okay. There's
it
no
will
hope
work.
with this clock in this case.
I like the
I'm
minor.
going to stay quiet.
How many
I like the minor.
Raise your hands for minor. Raise your hands for major. I guess I'll have to rescore it in major. Okay, let's do another one like that. Here is a film called The Ancient Law. Did anybody see this at the Castro Theater a couple of years ago when Alicia Spiegels and I did it? This is a story of a rabbi's son who leaves the shtetl to become an actor in Vienna in the 1860s. And there is one scene where he is being followed by a archduchess who has invited him to a big gathering at her palace. And so I'll play you two different scores for this film, or for this scene rather. Whoops, wrong one. That's another scene. Well, I'll play it. So, I mean, you could imagine that scene with any kind of music. Well, we chose that because we thought it was germane to the setting and the characters. But what would happen if the music was just about the time that the film was written, which was 1923 in Berlin? What if we just play music in that style? as it happens in some cases, you write a rock score to a silent film. It becomes ridiculous. Let's see if I can find the scene that I was looking for before. I see a question here. How much musical direction am I given for a movie from Lilian? Sometimes very little, sometimes quite a lot, and we just have to figure out the best way to do it. Sometimes arguing with the producer, if we meaning myself or my other musicians or my wife, if we feel strongly about an idea that we have, then we have to do what everybody does in the presentation and try to make our case for it. All right, here's the scene that I was looking for. And now it disappeared from the other screen. I believe I'll have to share it for it. Okay, now we got it. So this is the first scene I was talking about, where the Duchess has invited Baruch, who you've just seen, to this big party. Well, what do you think? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Yeah, this was a score that was commissioned by a well-known French composer, contemporary, living now, for this film, and it was shown at the Berlinale, at the big Berlin Film Festival, and all over Europe. And the entire score is like that for 2 hours and a quarter. Here's the score that Alicia and I wrote for this scene, at any rate. I don't know that the sound is as loud as it needs to be, but you get the idea. And so forth. I see some thumbs up. I mean, it's an obvious choice, and I just, doing it any other way, it seems like you're trying to make some sort of a strange point for no apparent reason. Johann Strauss is on the podium. There's an orchestra presumably playing some piece, although I have looked at every single Strauss senior and junior waltz, and I cannot find one that matches their bowings. But it's an early waltz that would have been from the period of the film, 1862, called the Liebeslieder Waltz. And we play it for that scene and have never had any reason to change our mind. Any questions so far? We have maybe 15 minutes.
Donald, we've been getting some input for remastering some classics and some inspiration for you.
Okay.
If you're game for that.
Absolutely.
Okay, I know when we first started discussing this, Renee offered up the year 2100 with a very small population.
2100. Oh, I see this. Score a movie set in 2100 with a much smaller world population, maybe only 6 billion. Oh, that's very small. People have no need to talk to make their wants or needs known because robots will know everything and respond. And we need music for this film. Huh? Are there any live? There are people and there are robots. So, I mean, we could go into robotic mode, I suppose. But I don't know whether robots would like that music in 2100. Maybe we should write a song about the robots of 2100. Or we'll write a song about something else. Did that seem like that was the music for that movie? Or do we want something more John Williamsy, which would be, you know, whoops, I lost the, oh, yeah. Turn this off, turn that off. You have to be, these days, you have to be not only a one-man band, you have to be a one-man tech studio also. I mentioned earlier on, before some of you joined, a virtual choir production that's on YouTube now with 17,500 singers. And they had so many tech people for weeks putting all of that together. I have to do this myself. However, sometimes, what was I going to do? Oh, we were going to take a suggestion for some, Ryan, tell us what we're going to do.
Well, we were talking about John Williams in the year 2100.
Oh yes, John Williams. He always writes the same music for these things. Sometimes they sound exactly alike. Robots in the 22nd century. He also has this other side of him, which is much more angular. If you know his violin concerto or some of the other scores, like what's that one about the guy who's I think Leo DiCaprio is masquerading as various people. What's that called that film? Susan, Debbie, Galen, do you know that? Oh no. I have other suggestions here. Percussion only, perhaps Eric Satie-esque. Okay.
Great. Catch Me If You Can. Thank you,
Catch Me If
Susan.
You Can, right. That wonderful score. If you haven't ever heard that, it's quite unlike his Star Wars, E.T., Superman type and Schindler's List type music. One terrific kind of jazzy score. All right. Percussions only, perhaps Eric Satie, Satie-esque. I have to lose the piano. Hang on. Okay. That's what the Gymnopédie number 3 would sound like and played on it. If I actually play the Gymnopédie notes on the piano but using this percussion stop, it sounds like this. Charming. From Nicholas Sosin. Oh, my son is here. Hello, Nicholas. 2100, just one synth bass note as an arpeggio.
What?
Nicholas wants one synthesizer bass note as an arpeggio. Well, Nicholas, first of all, an arpeggio is more than one note. So this is like a red herring question. One
Right.
synthesizer bass note.
Looks like the Sosin family reunion has turned hostile here.
Sounds like, here's my bass note. How do I arpeggiate it? I can't arpeggiate it. You just listen to it for all eternity, like that piece of John Cage's in, where is that, in Leipzig or someplace in Germany, that it's going to last 800 years. And he has bricks holding down the organ notes. So for the next 20 years, all you'll hear is this. And then somebody will move the brick and it'll be wonderful.
Donald, I know you're a master of the Beatles and playing them in different styles.
Okay.
Do you,
Say so. What would you like to hear?
I was wondering if you could do at least an abridged version of the Abbey Road medley and then toggle between various composers while you work your way through that.
Aye. Abbey Road medley. You have to give me the titles because that is one album that I really never studied very.
That's okay. Then let me open it up to everybody else here. If there's a favorite Beatles song that you'd like to hear Donald do and a composer you want to match the song to, it's pandemic
The party
entertainment
game
for the
here
ages.
is pick a Beatles song and a couple of different composers, and I'll play it in that style. So, got a favorite Beatles song? No Beatles? Okay.
We've got a Let It Be by Bach request from
Let It Be
one
by
Debbie
Bach.
Sosin.
I'll say, if you don't know the song, Let It Be, that is. Everybody knows that song. So, in the style of Bach, you could go in many different directions, even within the world of Bach. You could play it as a G. So, another one, another composer, another song. Eleanor Rigby in the style of Stockhausen.
Oh,
Okay. Eleanor Rigby, you remember, goes. Okay, so in the style of Stockhausen. Interesting. There's a wonderful piece of his where he just plays one chord over and over again. I think it's. Well, we would have to have some bowed gongs maybe, or someone chanting. We went to her grave actually in Liverpool a couple of years ago. It was a very fascinating time. Eleanor Rigby in the style of William Bochum, who I know from my Michigan days.
yeah.
So he writes quite a variety of music himself. We'll get back to Joni Mitchell and Charles Ives. Bochum writes rags, for one thing, which might be. Charles Ives. We're still with Eleanor Rigby. Let's see what Charles can come up with today. Whoops, I'm in the wrong thing here. Missing movement from the Concord Sonata, called the Liverpool Sonata. Joni Mitchell. Thanks for the thumbs up, Susan. Hey Jude in the style of Rachmaninoff. Could go on all night. Also Tchaikovsky. Let's make it a little bit. Take a sad song and make it even sadder.
Yay.
This could go on all night. Yesterday in the style of Rachmaninoff. Same key. Sometimes it's nice to have a piece to mold your song on, and sometimes they work really well. Other times it's like trying to, fit a square peg into a round hole. If we tried another piece, like one of the Etude tableaux. This piece. So, the end.
Yeah, I was just going to say, with respect to your time, maybe we just go right into the end.
If you have the time, I have the time, because I wanted to show you something else here, which was a Buster Keaton. We watched a little Charlie Chaplin. I wanted to show you a Buster Keaton film where I had to go in a number of different stylistic directions in a hurry. He is about to run into an Irish woman and get into trouble. There's a accident on the street, and she hauls him into a judge. But what she doesn't know is that the judge only speaks Polish and has been hired in the previous scene by a Polish couple who wants to get married and says, "Can you marry us?" And the Polish judge says, "Can you marry us in Polish?" He says, "Yes, that's the only language I speak." So we have to move from this Polish thing to this Irish thing, and I made that sound like this. All of the instruments are synthesized. It's but one day I hope to have an actual sextet play this. You'll hear a synthesized flute and a bassoon and a piano and drums and bass and something else. I forget what the other thing is. And we're looking for a film called My Wife's Relations. Here we go. And that's called, thank you, that's called My Wife's Relations. And that's going to be playing in theaters at some point as part of the Cohen Collection's restorations of Buster Keaton shorts and features. Other questions? I have one other piece I'd like to show you, which is what I'm working on at this very moment, if you'd like to see that. It's a film, as I mentioned earlier to the first group, that is supposed to look like a Soviet film about Polish Jews made in the 20s, but it in fact is an American film made in the 80s by San Diego artist Eleanor Antin. And it was shot in San Diego with a cast of largely unknowns that she just handpicked, and wonderful, wonderful characters. And so the music is being written by the great klezmer violinist Alicia Spiegels, with whom I've worked on 2 earlier projects, The Ancient Law that we did at the San Francisco Silent Film Festival 2 years ago, made in Berlin in 23, and then an Austrian film called City Without Jews that we did at the JCC in February, if some of you may have seen that. So this one is called The Man Without a World, and I will show you, first I'll show you how I go about doing this. I have an app called Digital Performer. So this shows me all the different scenes. I've looked at every scene in the film and noted exactly where they took place. And then I can look at this as a kind of a player piano. Oops, changed. changed my screen, and so it doesn't like that anymore. 1 second. So now I see all these little events here. So each one of these is a note. Pitch is going up and down. Time is going this way like a graph. And I can change how long or short each one of these notes is, how loud they are, and what instrument plays them. So in this case, it's only piano and violin. And let me enable the sound and give you the film to see and hear what this, a little bit of what this sounds like. Can you see that now? So this will become a score for violin and piano. Right now, Alicia is doing some sketches of her own, and they'll be violin and piano combined probably by the end of next week. So are there any other questions at this point? Comments?
Donald, I think it's a good place for us to wrap up and let you go about your evening.
I hope this has been, as Ryan hoped, has been educational and a little bit of entertainment. And it's a joy to have been able to connect with you. And I hope that eventually I can come back to, oh, I did want to do, I'm sorry, I have to do one thing. I would be remiss if I didn't share a project so you can get to hear the hear the beautiful voice of my wife singing one of the songs that we've written for a film. And I think that would be the best way to go out. This is a 1915 Italian film called Filibus, about a woman who is playing 3 different characters, one of which is a thief who operates in a dirigible, the other is a countess, and the other is a detective. And so that's what this sounds like. And I hope you'll be able to see this.
Who is that behind the mask? Don't look now and don't dare ask. Who's suspected everywhere? Who's suspended in the air? Tiptoe, tiptoe silently, closer, closer, can you see? Could it be that Filibus, Filibus, Filibus?
That's just the trailer. It's out on DVD, or soon will be soon out on DVD from Milestone Films, which is, I have to turn my cursor. Milestone Films, which is also releasing The Man Without a World, this film that Alicia and I are scoring. So if there are no more questions and answers, Yes, Liliane?
I was just going to say thank you for sharing it. Seeing all of the color that you put into the silent movie really shows that you fill the words with the music. You have music and words. So it's more than just a regular film. It's so much richer and so much
Thank
more
you.
creative.
Those few of us who spent a lot of our time doing this for silent films, some in England, some on the continent and around the US, and a couple of in Asia that I know of. We really love this whole idea of trying to provide an atmosphere for these precious films. And when it's done right, and I don't claim I do it right all the time, but when people get it, they become big fans of silent film. And I hope that this will inspire some of you to look online or in your libraries to see what else is available. Joanna and I have about 50, 60 DVDs that we've recorded, and our website, which I can show you, I think, somewhere. It's disappeared. Website is not to be found anyplace. Is oldmoviemusic.com, and you can go there and keep abreast of what we're doing. And one of these days we'll get back out to San Francisco. Galen, yeah?
I just wanted to share a little testimonial. This comes from my mother, who is no longer with us. I've known Don for, maybe 40 years, but I had never really mentioned him to my mom. We collaborated. We're both composers, songwriters. And my mother and her then husband, my stepdad, used to go to all kinds of events in New York City, sponsored by, say, the YMCA, the public library. And one day my mother said to me, Galen, last night we went to the most wonderful event. We saw a silent movie, and there was a pianist, and he was playing along with this movie, and he was extraordinary. He caught every nuance, he just brought the movie alive. She went on, and I said, Mom, by any chance was his name Donald Sosin? And she said, well, dear, I have the program right here. Why, yes, how did you know? My mother was not a musician of any stripe. She was not a she was not a composer, not a pianist, and she was not into silent films.
That's really lovely.
But she knew what she'd heard. Yay, Dawn. And we all heard it tonight. Yay, Dawn.
Thank you for sharing that, Galen. You're making my job easy right now. Donald, thank you so much for
thanks, everybody.
spending the time with us. This was terrific, and worth noting that when we kicked it off about 4 months ago, it was with Alicia Spiegels, and now wonderful bookend in you, Donald. Thank you very much for being with us.
Great. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a good evening.
You too.
Good night.
Thanks, Dad. Good night.